Is there a debate topic that hasn't been done that needs to be done? And if not, why do you keep debating?
Oh, well, the second part's actually easy.
Yeah, I know, but you have to go to the first part first.
I have to do the first part first?
Do whatever you like.
I think that what we're going to constantly see, or what I would hope to see, is some revisions of subtleties moving forward on this side. We're going to constantly debate, does God exist? I did a debate with Andrew Murray. Should America be one nation under God? I thought that was cool. Let's come up with another topic. So I think we're going to see some of those. Hopefully we'll see different ones as certain religions kind of maybe fall out of favor. I keep doing it because despite what some people say, people change their minds. Not necessarily over the course of the debate, not necessarily the person I'm debating. Somebody's watching the TV show for the first time, somebody's seeing the debate for the first time, or somebody's heard this over and over and over and over and over again and it hasn't made sense, but it will this time. Or I'm one of the ones in that series of hearing it, and eventually it's going to make sense because this was in the series as well. And the Great Comfort call. Great Comfort is no longer allowed to debate me, and neither is Psy or G-Man. All right. The reason is not because I don't want to have the conversation. It's, I don't think they add anything to the conversation. It's going to, so what good does it do to run around, hey, I'm going to play basketball with the kindergarten class and just rah, 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 rah. Nobody gets anything out of that.
Well, he didn't really debate you either. He just prayed for you. He essentially,
Yeah.
it was platitudes and whatnot and pawing at you. He didn't come for an exchange.
Well, he said, when they come to the table with a genuine conversation, he's ready to have that conversation. And in none of the examples that you just mentioned were they bringing the conversation. They didn't have anything to bring to the table, so they're done.
Yep.
Go ahead.
All right, sorry we made you wait, because we do this between the three of us all the time.
I would never have guessed. A quick one, I think. You probably weighed long and carefully. Are there realist grounds for morality? In other words, the battle between moral relativism and moral realism. And I'm taking realism to mean empirical kinds of evidence and reasons to support a code of right and wrong. Let's hear your thoughts, all three separately.
I think that that we evolved as a societal species, that we're a social animal, and it's not that our intelligence and our technology are not the advantages that won us over, because we didn't have that when we became the dominant species on this planet. What got us that was our ability to work together and empathize for each other, that we took risks and altruism for each other, that to the benefit of our friends and our family, friends, and fellows mattered enough that it was worth the cost of our own lives, or the risk of our own lives to save somebody else. And this is what gave us the edge.
Is that an answer to that same?
Yes, I think there's simple definitions for what is right or what is wrong, or degrees thereof, however you want to measure it. What was the old thing that the definition of whatever causes or prolongs happiness and pleasure and things like these are generally good, and whatever causes suffering unnecessarily and so forth is generally bad. And when we have this kind of a rule in our lives, this is not just our individual lives that are succeeding, it's the entire population is succeeding. So society succeeds when we have each other protecting each other's safety and prolonging each other's lives. If we're selfish and we're not altruistic at all, we go nowhere. We retract, and we would lose all the advantages that we've achieved.
So I'm happy to have the conversation with you afterwards. Okay. Because in part, my view, which we may not need to have a conversation, is that the actual morality label is getting in the way of the conversation. I think that we're physical beings in a physical universe, and there are real, actual, objective facts to be discovered about the consequences of our actions, and whether or not this increases or decreases things like well-being, that we then try to package up and call morality. That there is ultimately, you get back to the Izzat problem of, well, why should we care about well-being? Well, I don't care to have that conversation, because I do care about well-being. And when I talk about, let's not throw morality out the window, I'm talking about well-being. In this generalized, ill-defined sense that people criticize Sam for, that's what I'm talking about. And I think that is tied up into physical facts about, I think everything is tied up into physical facts about the universe, including the opinions that we have. But that's why I was like, let's not There are people who are getting ready to throw things at me if I keep going.
I don't have anything really new to add. I mean, involved moral systems, I buy into that. Dan Barker had a great sort of line about acting to minimize harm. You know, when I was religious, we had these weird sort of hard lines on morality, and now we can see it in a much more nuanced way. But I don't believe if there is an objective morality. I really don't know. I'm curious as to the answer myself.
Yeah, I think you'd all recognize that.
Where's the feedback coming from? Is that me? Is that Aaron? Is that Matt?
It might be this one.
Maybe a little close to the speaker. Would it help if I scooted over? Let's scoot down just a hair and give the audience its ears a break.
All right, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, in response to that, I'm not sure how logical you think it is, but I mean, if we've been willing to cooperate and sacrifice for each other, we've got a long history of doing it as tribes. And a lot of the times that people were willing to die for one another, well, it was in fighting outsiders. It's the idea that each tribe, each nation, society, whichever those words you're comfortable with, has a different code of morality, and that they're willing to go to war over it. You know, this maybe has toughened the human species culturally, perhaps, but it's a madness I don't think we can afford anymore, is what I'm saying. And I was wondering whether you thought there was a way out of it. But I think Matt's right. Maybe this is a conversation.
Yeah, because now we're into a discussion about tribalism, and there's people waiting.
Yeah.
Which, I'm with you. Let's get rid of tribalism. Bring on the one world government. Somebody record that, send it to my parents, they will love it. Brand me with the son of the beast.
Hi there, Matt. You talked about ridicule, and I read this amazing article with, is an interview in Salon of Patton Oswalt, and he talks a lot about just comedy as a liberating tool. And one of the questions they ask is whether or not the Onion's quote, or the Onion's Twitter comment about Quvenzhané Wallis, I don't know if you guys remember that, where they said Quvenzhané Wallis, who was an 11-year-old girl that was at the Oscars, they called her a C-word as sort of a joke. And that he sort of speaks about it and says that you should be able to say whatever you want in comedy in order to liberate. And I personally credit a lot of my feelings about religion to people like George Carlin, who used comedy as a way of ridiculing religion in such a way that made it funny to me. And when something is funny, it just loses all of its power. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I know you all use comedy in some way in your speeches, and I'm just asking whether or not you think that comedians are a really good force for change in religion.
Yeah, the one problem that I have with comedy, I would love to do like full-on stand-up routines when I do these kind of presentations. It would be fun. The problem is if you need to be accurate, you know, it's not always possible to make a rhyme if everything has to be, you know, literally true. And so it's not always possible to make a complete comedy routine.
You know, I was watching Christopher Hitchens mock religion that showed me that it could be done without fear. I'd never really noticed, seen someone do it that way. Lightning didn't strike from the sky. After it was over, I thought, holy shit, you know, he got away with it, right? But I'll tell you why I try to temper it with a compassion for people. You know why I mock a lot of the stuff in the Bible and a lot of religious belief? For me, it's not as much about them. I'll admit it's more about me. It's like the unholy Trinity. Right? Blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. It's the one thing that guarantees you a spot in hell forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And blaspheming the Holy Spirit, to me, mocking the Holy Spirit, essentially says to that entire culture, that entire false dogma, all the bullshit they taught me for decades when I was growing up, all the threats of hell, all the bad science, all that stuff, it says, you are powerless to control me anymore. I now live my life on my terms. That's why I mock. Right? I'm saying, you know, Jesus, Thor, Zeus, Wotan, right? They don't hold power over my life anymore. And in many ways, mockery is my way of sort of making that declaration of fearlessness or attempted fearlessness. But I think it also has to be tempered with compassion and empathy for people.
Yeah, I've seen people have some hesitation in criticizing the Bible or in criticizing Jesus or something like that. You know, they have some problems with religion, but they want to withhold some respect or reverence for the holy book. You know, maybe they don't believe in it entirely because they're holding on to something that maybe has been culturally ingrained in them that you're supposed to respect this. And fuck that piece of shit. You know, that's just, it's the better response to take it for what it actually says and throw it out. I had a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, that said she didn't believe in anything in the Bible, but she liked Jesus. Jesus was a good guy. And so I started tearing into the things that Jesus specifically didn't say, until she realized that, wow, that was pretty fucked up, and stopped believing it altogether.
But when you're talking about speaking to someone's, by ridiculing, does it cause them to double down in their belief and put walls up? Is there a fear there of that? I mean, what do you guys think of mockery? You think mockery's productive, Pam?
I think it takes down those walls.
Mockery's healthy.
It gives people permission. As soon as, so I can remember I laughed at religious jokes long before I was ever an atheist. I took a comparative religions class, and I remember thinking, gosh, all those other religions are just weird, but mine's not. And when people start poking fun at that, and you start realizing, oh yeah, maybe I do believe some weird stuff, and you chip away. Now, I'm a huge advocate of free speech. Say whatever you want. You know, I mean, there are limitations only in the sense that you don't get to say what you want in my house without me actually asking you to leave. Similarly at the convention microphone or whatever else. But do whatever joke you say whatever seemingly offensive phony you want, and the people who find it funny, the people who don't can object all day, and they can object loudly because that's their right too. Yeah. But I think comedy and music. So going back and listening to some albums that I loved, that stuck ideas in my head. You complain about being able to do the Christian pledge to the flag of the Bible, and we can say, oh my gosh, we can do all the Schoolhouse Rock stuff. But there were actual songs from, ideas from Neil Peart from Rush that stuck in my head even while I was a believer, and it wasn't until years later I was like, oh, but that's what he meant! And so I think it's great. And jokes work there too.
Hey guys, I have a lot of questions, but I'll be brief because they're all for Professor Krauss. But I do have some lovely parting gifts.
Should ask that guy a question about
Trinity of gifts for you guys, if I can bring them up real quick. Would it be okay?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
I've got a trinity of gifts for each of you. If I can bring them up.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Give them theirs first.
They're wrapped in the fires of hell.
You're all the same, not to fight over anything.
All right.
They're all the same.
Should we keep it secret so nobody knows?
I want to know.
Nobody out there should know. We should know, but don't tell anybody what we got.
Thank you for the wonderful gift from hell.
By the way, if you ever find yourself in hell, I was there last month. The hotel, I highly recommend the hotel. There's a pool on the 7th floor. It's really great.
So there are some people, no, we can reveal it, but there are some people who will think that, shit, I forgot what I was going to say.
Think that.
If I was thinking the way I used to be thinking, I would have considered him a godsend, because one of the things in here are Jesus bandages, and I actually cut myself before I came up here and needed a bandage, couldn't find one.
Jesus.
I think this one is addressed to me, the Bigfoot Pocket Journal.
And I have a Moses action figure.
Yes. Please, thank you very much.
He's going in my office right next to Dashboard Jesus and the Queen Alien from the Alien. Thank you.
Hey, you made it back through.
I'll make this one quick. So you mentioned mockery as a thing, a tool to criticize religion. With regards to the Draw Muhammad cartoons, a lot of people, and I think the three of you will agree that people have the right to draw Muhammad, and that should be allowed.
Yeah.
But the question is, do you think it's an effective way of fighting freedom of speech?
Depends on how it's done and why.
How should it be done? Sorry.
Well, the demonstration that has already been done, all these people were terrified. Every individual person was terrified of drawing Muhammad for the longest time, until 10,000 people made videos of themselves drawing Muhammad. And what are you going to do with 10,000 people doing it? Now suddenly they're doing conferences, conventions to draw Muhammad. It's a little absurd to try to threaten the volume of people. And if you do, it's going to be the Streisand effect all over again. The reaction, the retaliation is going to be so much worse that you're going to martyr your own cause. So there's no point in pursuing it. So now what we're getting from people, from Muslims, is that, we were never completely prohibited from drawing Muhammad. It was just a kind of a ridiculous thing. So they're backing away from that now too and becoming more reasonable as a result.
Are they backing away?
I'm not saying universally. I'm not saying everybody. But
Not
there
the
are people that are
extremists.
making those statements because I've read them. I've had them addressed to me.
So for me, the two differences are when there's this view that in general, people are trying to impose their religious views onto others and say, you can't do this, and you say, oh yes, I can. I'm all in favor of that. What we've seen is people doing it not with regard to the broader issues or as a statement about free speech, but hey, we're going to get together and stand in front of your mosque and we're going to, draw Muhammad. When we know nothing about the people that are in there, we are stereotypically, just assuming that you're the same people because you have the same religion. Now, there's a lot of blame to go around in something like that because it's not always, Muslims don't always do a good job of distinguishing themselves from each other, just as many Christians don't. As a matter of fact, it's not in their best interest to, which is how Christians and Catholics, because there's a discrepancy there as to whether or not there should be in the same group, and Jews get together. There's no such thing as a Judeo-Christian anything. And yet, Judeo-Christian, they fight like cats and dogs until you need to unite against this. Well, if you're just going out with the intent of being provocative for the sake of that, I don't see that much value in it. If you're responding to somebody else attempting to marginalize your rights or dictate what you can do or push their religion onto all of society, and you know the people that you're going to are the ones that are involved in this, then I'm all for it.
So when we did the first, or when they did, because I had nothing to do with it, when they did the first Draw Muhammad Day conference, it was a success. Over the internet, it achieved the goal that they were trying to do, regardless whether they were trying to be respectful of the drawings or trying to be disrespectful of the drawings and antagonistic. It didn't matter. They achieved the goal that they wanted. Now, more recently, when they tried to do the thing in Phoenix, which is what I think he's referring to, they were actually looking for a confrontation because this wasn't rational free thinkers that were doing these. These were very right-wing people in many instances. These were Christians in many instances, and they were looking for a confrontation against the other. And then I sided more with the Muslims in that case because they invited these bikers, these heavily armed bikers, into the mosque to hear the prayers. And actually, unfortunately, the whole biker thing kind of worked against him because a lot of these people saw that these people were people, and it diffused their whole purpose for their demonstration.
Well, we need to probably finish after the young lady who was number 4 in line. We probably need to cap the line there. Do we have time for the 5th?
We'll see. We'll try not to give 50,000 long answers to everything.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering if you had an opinion on why the anti-vaccination movement seems to largely be taking place on the liberal side of the aisle in North America, and also if prominent atheists like Bill Maher, being at least skeptical of vaccinations, if not an anti-vaxxer, is hurting the new atheist movement, maybe convincing agnostics and that not to go our way?
Anytime you have a prominent figure that's advocating any kind of a woo or that's going against the findings of science, there's going to be people to follow that person. So yeah, it would be great if, like there has been, there have been at least one guest on the show that says, well, yeah, you are on the crazy side because of this. There needs to be a little bit more of the direct counter.
Doesn't it draw a circle around how we're all susceptible to irrational thinking, right? We're just people. Right? We're free thinkers, but we're not supreme thinkers. We're flawed, flesh and blood human beings with biases. We got to figure out that we have them and use the scientific method to try to get through.
And I'll explain more about that later, after the event, because I'll be here. I'll talk about how irrational I am.
It's a great video on YouTube on Smarter Every Day about a bicycle that was engineered to turn switch left and right. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's intriguing, but it does get into the biases and the baggage that we bring to things. And so when people get rid of religion, that doesn't. One of the things is, aha! I have come up with what I think is the correct answer to what is literally the easiest question in the world. Do I have any good reason to believe this? So therefore, I'm a genius, and now everything I believe must be right. Oh, and the people who are like me, they must be right too. We're idiots, like I was saying.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on, and it kind of reflects back to, I guess, Matt's answer more to the last question, but back to altruism, evidence-based decision-making, and a society that has representative democracy, especially in light of what we know, what we've heard about the state of the U.S.
I don't know what the question is.
Are you open to, have you thought about a different way of organizing society instead of electing people to make decisions that are not evidence-based?
Yeah. What would that
I don't support any decision that's not evidence-based. I mean, there's got to be some kind of reason.
I don't know why you would.
Yeah, for whatever action or position you have, there has to be a reason. That's why I said in my presentation that if you give religion as your justification, then you haven't given a reason and aren't justified. You need an actual reason. And it's got to be logical or it's got to be evidentiary.
And I'd like to punctuate it. It may not have been said enough. Look, you know, we're from the States. Sometimes it's an easy target, right? You can attack. I can talk about my grandma, but y'all can't, right? We all do that. Well, my country, I can be openly critical, but there are reasons to be encouraged. People today, under the age 30 and under, are twice as likely than they were 2 decades ago to be either non-religious or apathetic about religion or whatever. Some data just came out that shows that all these different religious groups are on the decline, and yet atheist agnostics or people who are just non-religious, not necessarily atheists, but they're just non-religious, is rising hugely and has over the past 7 years. Right? There are great inroads being made for civil rights, for the removal of creationism as science in public schools. I know many of the challenges we have are in either hugely conservative states or private schools, but there are reasons to be excited. And it, you know, the fight's far from over. Matt always likes to say, don't see a success and give up, because that's how we get in real trouble when that happens. But you know, I think that I really do think things are slowly getting better in that regard.
Did you say over the last 7 years?
The data was a 7-year study.
So that's how long we've been streaming the show.
You're welcome. You're welcome, everybody.
I had somebody report the same data that he was talking about and said, hey, that's when Aaron uploaded his video.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
One of the big differences in politics between Canada and the U.S. is American politicians have to wear their religion on their sleeve.
Yeah.
And personally, as a voter myself, I sort of often see most of the different politicians basically being just variations of the same thing. And I sort of wonder, what's your opinion in the States, if somebody actually didn't toe the religion line in the sense of like, for example, a couple of Democratic conventions ago, Hillary and Barack Obama and the others were asked, you know, what's your favorite verse from the Bible? And personally, I would have loved to have seen one of them say, seriously, that's your question? You know, apart from there being, you know, a separate, you know, not supposed to be a religious test for office, what's that got to do with my ability to govern?
So it doesn't, the religious test, no religious test doesn't apply there. It's about the government can't impose the religious test. The people who are voting can impose it. I don't like mustaches, so I'm not voting for you. They get to do whatever they want. They get to behave irrationally. I like the fact that I think our country is moving more away from they have to wear their religion on the sleeve to they just can't wear their non-religion on their sleeve. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
Personally,
I hope.
what I would like to see is I'd like to see when somebody asks a potential candidate that question, I would like the candidate to be able to answer. A strong candidate would have to be a strong candidate with, you know, with a lot of following and a lot of strong policies and so forth, but it would have to be this kind of person who says, I don't have time for that kind of nonsense. And I would like that to be the honest answer and be done.
I'd like to run for office. Can we just leave the mics up? I'd like to run for office so someone would ask me that question. He's my favorite character in the Bible, and I could look at him and say, Thomas. Doubting promise. He said, show me the nail holes, or I won't believe.
And my favorite quote out of the Bible is oh my God, what was it? Ecclesiastes 3:18 through 21. Go look it up.
I would have gone for the whore of Babylon, which is why I can't be elected.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All of you cited the importance of facts and empathy for people. I wonder your opinions when they conflict, say when a person's on their deathbed and their religion convictions give them such comfort. In those situations, do you still think we should persevere for the truth?
I'm so glad you asked me that question.
I didn't even hear it.
Well, she's talking about compassion in the final moments of a person's life. If they embrace belief, is that the time to be an ideologue, to be right on the facts, or is the compassionate thing to do something else, maybe even lie, maybe even be deceived? I was talking to Dr. Valerie Tirico at dinner. 2 nights ago, we had a big dinner in Seattle with everybody. My father and I are estranged. My parents and I don't have a very good relationship. We don't really speak much. They're theologian-level believers, and you can imagine what me being here tonight does to them. It gives me no joy to know that they are grieved and pained and feel like they failed. They failed themselves, they failed me, they failed God. My father being 80, I think about the time when he's on his deathbed, right? That day comes. What happens if he and I are in a room together and he is aching? He believes in a literal hell, and I'm going there, and he thinks it's partially his fault. He's about to die. And he says, please say the salvation prayer with me, Seth. Now, there are some who say that if I was to kneel down by his hospital bed and go through that motion with him as an act of what I would call compassion, that I was to sell out, that I was lying to myself, that I didn't stick to my guns. And I myself honestly think if it was just he and me in the room and I'm not on the internet and it's just about us, the compassionate thing to do for that man, to give him a final few seconds of peace as he passes, would be to go through those motions. What's that cost me? It didn't cost me my integrity. It gave a moment of comfort when it didn't really matter in any other way. And that's how I've fallen in that way. I don't know how you guys would approach that.
I'm just glad that I don't even know the damn prayer, so I wouldn't even be able to play that part. When my dad died, when I was at his deathbed, my mother was there, even though they'd been divorced for decades, and she said, you want me to bring in the missionaries? And my dad's eyes darted to me. He said, no, I think it's too late for that. and I got to say something about my dad. Never has he ever shown an ounce of fear, and I mean to the very end. I loved that about him. I don't know what he believed or didn't, but I like the way that he said no.
I mean, do you guys think is it selling out?
No, it's not about you.
Yeah, it's not about me. It's not about me trying to be right.
And that's why I'm glad I don't know the prayer, because it's not about me.
I can't say what I do for sure, because I haven't been in that situation. But it struck me all of a sudden that it's like, and I don't have kids, but I wish I had kids so I could tell this as if it were a story with me and my own kid. But if they woke up from a terrible nightmare and they think there's monsters underneath the bed, you check, the monsters under the bed are gone, and you comfort them. And then you worry about teaching them later on because, but at that moment, that's what they need. And I don't know that you're necessarily doing any harm, because you've got to get them to the point where they might listen to learn later on. And when we're talking about the end of life thing, what difference does it make? So,
What do you think? What do you think?
Well, I have to agree with the person in the audience when they said it's not about us.
What does she think?
It's not about us, it's about her.
I continue to comfort the people in my family that continue that and are quite elderly. I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to talk a little bit of where we're going, where we've been. It seems to me, and could just be my perceptions, but 40 years ago in the 70s, the fundamentalist crowd seemed to be pretty marginalized in society. They didn't have a major voice in the body politic and culture and so forth. And in much of, especially your part of the world, they seem to have become the body politic and the force of the culture and are having the reins. And this is, it seems to me we're going in the wrong direction, not obviously that's since I'm here. And given that, the kind of debating you do, Matt, and
I mean, really, you know this, all the real heavy lifting intellectually has been done for hundreds of years. There's nothing new here. And yet in the last generation or so, all that knowledge has been forgotten, and it troubles me. Where do you guys see us going in the future? What's in store for the next 40 years?
I don't think it's been forgotten. The new here is the people. The thing that we have to keep reminding people is that, you can't just stop. You've got to keep working. In the 19th century, Robert Grant Ingersoll is running around the United States. He's speaking at a Republican National Convention. He's having debates in newspapers. The free thought movement's great. And yes, we've defeated religion. Now we've got this theory of evolution, all this other stuff. Let the little people keep their religion. It'll fade away. Boy, that was a big mistake. And you had the godless communism reaction in the 50s. And then all the godless heathens went and got high and fell asleep. And then the religious right took over. And it's not that this is forgotten, it's that there's a new batch of people coming in all the time, and there are some people who just need to be reminded. And so I'm an atheist because I'm a skeptic. I'm an activist because I'm a humanist, because I give a damn about what kind of world I live in and what kind of world I leave behind, even though there are Christians that why would you care about what world you leave behind? You won't be here. I don't know. Call me crazy. Somebody else did it for me or tried to, I kind of owe it. I think I come in with some real debt.
Since you are the last one for this question, I have to remind to say that this comes up every time. I mean, every time. And it's not just that, if religion is ever dispensed with, we will still have other forms of woo. And as he's already pointed out, I've known many atheists who believe in all kinds of ridiculous things. We're not all skeptical people. I would like to encourage skeptical thinking. Like him, I would like to encourage humanism. And so that there's, simply that you don't believe in a God isn't good enough. And I am atheist the same way that he said. I'm atheist because I'm a skeptic. And I'm an activist because I'm a humanist. The same answer applies.
Amen.
Pardon me? Put a bow on.
Well, if I may, I did a presentation last year called The Copycats. Do you ever hear people hear about you coming to an event like tonight and they go, y'all are just going to atheist church? You got speakers, might as well be preachers, you paid money, might as well be passing the plates. You just traded one God for another. Right now you're going to the Church of Dawkins, right? We hear this quite a bit in my you don't know anything about free thinkers if you say we worship these people. Many times we admire what they brought to our lives. But I want to encourage you, if there's one final thought, I want to encourage you, don't ever apologize or feel the inclination to have to apologize for coming together like we have come together this weekend. The church likes to stamp a brand of ownership on all the good stuff that human beings do anyway. And coming together to celebrate what we have in common and what we want to accomplish, and we are more effective at accomplishing together than we are as an individual, well, that's just a human thing. It's not a church thing. And if we talk about money sometimes, it's because, it's a multi-billion-dollar religious machine out there, and sometimes it takes money to fight it. We have to stop being embarrassed about being who we are and being who we are together. Connecting, making friends, making relationships, disagreeing, challenging each other, loving each other, emboldening and strengthening each other. I spend most of my time in a studio by myself, one microphone. I have 1.5 million radio downloads a month out of 15,000 shows on Blog Talk Radio. We're ranked number 1, and I don't get a chance to hang with any of you until I come to events like this, and I need that. And I like to think many of you do too. What's that movie line? You complete me. And so I just want to encourage you to make the most of this weekend, to connect to each other, to be encouraged by the reasonable faces you see who want a better world just like you do, and to maybe even make lifelong friends. And thank you so much for being a friend to us tonight. Thank you very, very much, everybody.